I was just on 93.7 KLBJ with Charlie Hodge for 4 minutes. I do a Freedom Nugget on there during the break, and he told me this breaking news, and I actually heard this driving in on 590 briefly this morning. I wasn't really paying attention. It was something about panhandlers begging for money for the police. And yeah, they throw them back in jail on their parole. And so there's this aggressive halfway house group. That's why they have them handing out the slips of paper and really getting in your face. It's to go give it to the government. They're actual slaves. I mean, there's no end to the evil. Now imagine the diabolical nature of the scam. Maury Strong, back in the 70s and 80s, got a lot of criticism for saying you should have a license to have children. And they put it in Hollywood movies and culture. And then all the yuppies say, well, of course, there's too many people. Yeah, but they mean you too. And so Planned Parenthood, eugenics, Maury Strong, of course, is a front for the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. That's on record. I even have video clips. If we have time, I'll play some clips of him talking about, I got in trouble for saying you should have a license to have children, but it needs to be forced. And State Department Memorandum 200 is on record saying they wanted to force people not to have kids and how to use war and famine and to get countries in so much debt that all the government spending goes to debt instead of the people. And so societies collapse. We're talking to climatologist Dr. Tim Ball. And you know, last time we had him on, he got into the science of how global warming wasn't man-made and is natural. It's actually a good thing, but unfortunately we're going into a cooling cycle with the ice caps of Mars getting bigger and some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn refreezing that had become liquid. They were liquid methane, now they're freezing. Notice he's just talking about what the overall agenda is. And I think that's the way to counter these people. Instead of arguing with people that say they invented the internet and things, it's better just to show they're a pack of criminals trying to vertically integrate the economy and carry out eugenics. But I think that's the direction you were going, Dr. Ball.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that they've very cleverly done, and as you know, Alex, you can win any argument by just distracting from the wider picture by focusing on one small point, and the focusing on CO2 to the distraction of the much wider issues is really how they've perpetuated this. And of course, then anybody that dared to stand up and question it is immediately attacked. Oh, climate skeptic. Well, I was called that years ago. I'm proud of that. All scientists should be skeptics.
They're trying to make it a hate crime in Europe.
Oh, I'm sure.
Akin to denying the Holocaust.
Oh, yeah, and James Hansen, the head of NASA GIS, who just was arrested for protesting at a coal plant as a civil servant, which makes you wonder what's going on, but he's made statements like we should be in jail. And we've got David Suzuki up here in Canada saying the same thing, that people should be in jail.
He also says humans are maggots that basically need to be exterminated.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that when you look at the whole environmental movement, and by the way, we needed to become more aware of our environment.
It's a bunch of gibbering control freaks who get off on pressing on the nerve of power. They've hijacked legitimate concerns against pollution and things like that.
Exactly, and now one of the ways that it's coming back on them a little bit, Alex, is that I've dealt with my whole career with extremism and wondered what its purpose was, and I finally realized that it's the extremists that define the limits for the majority. I'll give you an example. Feminism, very necessary changes, and still a lot of changes needed, but the majority of women were saying, well, how far do we go with this? Then the extremists started doing silly things, and the majority said, oh, no, now we're losing more than we're gaining. Well, the same things happened with the environmental. It got hijacked by the extremists in Greenpeace and Sierra Club and Kennedy and all of these other people, and now they're reaching the point where they're just being completely illogical, and so the majority of people are starting to say, well, hang on a minute.
Well, wait, it's not illogical if you want to kill the majority of the planet. I mean, they've admitted in studies that if they put in these carbon cuts, it would kill half the third world.
Oh, well, sure, and so we saw that with the biofuels. I mean, the switch to the biofuels, and what did that do to food supply around the world and people dying?
Yeah, well, so it's crazy like a fox.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, and I've written articles about this, Alex, that there is a very deep-seated anti-humanity or underlying the environmental movement. You know, and it's sort of, if we could just get rid of all the people on the planet, it would be a great place to live.
Well, do you know what, Dr. Ball, stay there. Long segment coming up. This was a short segment. I want you to go over that, how you think we beat them. What do we do about this gargantuan climate bill that creates these commissars that are over all areas of the economy, over 30 agencies who just do whatever regulations they want. Look, if humans are so bad, Suzuki, you little twit, you control freak, you fake intellectual, kill yourself. Stop saying kill African babies, punk. Man, you make me sick. Maurice Strong, hey, go jump off a cliff, you little effeminate twerp. Be right back. Stay with us, Dr. Ball.
This is Alex Jones. Have you heard of the Millionaire Patriot? Well, you should. He has a free handgun and 5 days of firearms training waiting for you. That's right. You can attend 5 days of world-class gun training at Front Sight Firearms Training Institute and secure a 30-state concealed weapons permit, all for pennies on the dollar. Plus, if you act fast, the Millionaire Patriot will give you a free Springfield Armory XD pistol in the caliber of your choice. I believe now is the time that you and your family need to be armed and trained to levels that exceed law enforcement and military standards. Front Sight provides such training without any boot camp mentality or drill instructor attitudes. This is real. Don't miss out. Secure a Front Sight defensive handgun course, plus a 30-state concealed weapons permit for pennies on the dollar, and get your free handgun. Go to frontsight.com today. That's FRONTSIGHT.com. Go to frontsight.com for your training and free gun.
To be faded.
We're talking to climatologist Dr. Tim Ball, and he's done a lot of great work warning people, getting the word out. Going to ask him in a moment some of the best ways to find some of his writings, the materials he's put out. We really appreciate him taking time out to talk to us today. Sir, you've read their own writings. You know what they're doing. They brag about it. Then they tell the public it's about humanity and our children and jobs, jobs, jobs. That was what they said over and over again as they passed the climate takeover bill. It's not just about eugenics, though. It's like a total Soviet society where everything's micromanaged. And we have these big global corporations who love it because they're monopoly capitalists. They know the biggest profits are made out of controlled partnerships with government. And you say people are waking up, and they are waking up. So they go from global warming to climate change to deteriorating atmosphere to carbon poison. I've seen dozens of video games, dozens, free on the Nickelodeon website and other places for kids where carbon monsters try to kill kids and the kids practice killing the carbon monsters. They teach it's an absolute fact. It's toxic waste. It will kill you. You can tell the general public the scientific name of water, and they will panic, most of them, and say ban it. If you go out and talk to a crowd of people, that happens. So you've got the floor. Break down who these people are, how we counter them, where you see this fight going, what you think of the world right now, all across Europe and the United States and Canada, falling to the climate cops, falling to the new green tyranny, the home inspections, the shutting down of the factories, the energy taxes. What in the world are we going to do?
Well, it's the power of the media, the spin doctors, has reached global proportions. And one of the things that's really problematic about it is the great bastion of freedom is the U.S. and the freedom for the individual in the U.S. And it's being destroyed. And what's ironic about it is that China is just ignoring all of what they're doing. China's not going to sign any climate bill. In fact, China are not only holding your debt now, but they're also saying, oh, well, by part of Kyoto, you've got to pay us for the damage that you've done. So the country that's holding most of your debt is telling you you've got to pay them as well. So it's really disturbing on a global scale. I tell people, you hear a lot of anti-Americanism, especially up here in Canada. I say, look, if you think the U.S. is a problem as a superpower, you ain't seen nothing yet. China will be a lot worse because China looks after China, period. And so this is what's happening on a larger scale. It's also, of course, why Maurice Strong has moved there. He's got in on the ground floor in what's going on in China, and so that's part of the difficulty. But what they needed was a vehicle. They needed a vehicle to control the public. They needed a vehicle that they knew that most of the public wouldn't understand. And, of course, the environment became the big issue, as we've discussed, an important issue. Everybody realized you got to keep your own home clean. And so people bought into it, but they didn't realize that it was a Trojan horse that these people were using to infiltrate. And, of course, then within that, the more strong focus on CO2 and controlling of the energy. Because, you see, I mentioned about the engine. You can shut the engine down by squeezing the fuel line. You can also stop the engine by plugging the exhaust. And, of course, that's what they're doing with pointing the finger at CO2. But one of the other problems is that the science where we need to focus is on the CO2. Say, okay, you brought us down to that. Let's look at what the arguments are, the scientific arguments. Now, the hypothesis, and scientists work by hypothesis. They say, well, if this could happen. Those ifs are assumptions. So, for example, Einstein's theory of relativity assumes that nothing can go faster than the speed of light.